The penthouse gleamed under the late afternoon sun, glass walls catching the golden light and casting intricate reflections across polished marble floors. Daniel Whitmore sat at his black obsidian desk, glass of amber whiskey untouched in his hand. His fingers tapped lightly against the tablet before him, scrolling through 3 profiles. Emma, Clara, and Lila. Each name represented more than a person. They were a puzzle, a reflection of ambition, desire, and concealed intentions. He had known them socially for months. Each encounter carefully observed, every smile and gesture memorized. Now it was time to measure what truly mattered, character. Behind him, Rosa, his maid, moved quietly through the spacious living room. Her hands were steady as she folded freshly laundered clothes, the soft rustle of fabric the only sound she made. The sunlight caught her hair, a soft halo around her face, illuminating her calm concentration. She had been with the Whitmores for 5 years, yet Daniel realized he had never truly noticed her until today. There was something different in her demeanor, something unspoken that quietly demanded attention. A notification blinked on the tablet. Daniel's lips curved into a subtle smile. "Let's begin." His assistant had already prepared a simple test. Each woman would be given the opportunity to use Daniel's credit card to make a purchase of her choosing. A subtle prompt, harmless on the surface, but rich with truth beneath. Daniel leaned back, remembering the lessons of his own childhood. He had been 9 when his father, a towering figure of both respect and fear, handed him a wallet filled with bills. "Watch closely," his father had said. "People reveal themselves in moments when they think no one is looking. Money shows the truth." The memory was sharp. His father's stern eyes, the employees trembling under scrutiny, and a young Daniel learning that generosity, greed, and loyalty could not be faked. That lesson had been burned into him, shaping every relationship, every choice. Emma, the socialite, was first. She entered the room with the confident sway of someone accustomed to wealth and attention. Her eyes lit up at the sight of the designer handbags, the rows of sparkling jewelry. Without hesitation, she began adding the most extravagant items to her virtual cart, each decision punctuated with delicate laugh, as though the world existed only to reward her taste. Next came Clara, sharp and precise, with the aura of someone who measured everything, even moments of generosity. She selected gadgets, fine wines, memberships to exclusive clubs, explaining each choice with meticulous logic, as if her mind were calculating an investment portfolio rather than a shopping spree. Finally, Lila stepped forward, quiet, introspective. Her fingers lingered over the items, not out of hesitation but deliberation. She chose moderately, occasionally pausing to think of someone else who might benefit from what she purchased. She smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, hinting at empathy buried beneath social grace. Rosa, unaware of the orchestrated scrutiny, added a hand-knit scarf to her modest cart. It was intended for the neighbor's sick child, a simple, heartfelt gesture. The audience sees it, but Daniel doesn't react yet, letting suspense simmer. Daniel's gaze returned to the tablet. The women were a reflection of choice, of desire, of ambition, but Rosa's purchase, so humble and unassuming, was quietly different. Something told him that this test, the one he orchestrated so carefully, was about to reveal more than he had expected. A sough from the city below reached the room, a reminder that beyond wealth and power, life's quiet acts often mattered most. That evening, Daniel arranged a private dinner in the penthouse's dining hall, the city lights twinkling like distant stars beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. The table was set with precision. Crystal glasses, silverware aligned perfectly, soft candlelight casting warm shadows. The 3 women arrived, unaware that the evening was another layer of his test, another opportunity to reveal the truth behind ambition, charm, and subtle intent. Emma arrived first, her designer heels clicking on the marble floor. She greeted Daniel with practiced warmth, her eyes scanning the table as if claiming it already. Clara followed, composed, clipboard-like precision in her demeanor, her mind seemingly cataloging every detail. Lila trailed slightly behind, holding herself with quiet elegance, her gaze flickering at the city skyline with a thoughtful intensity. Rosa, carrying a tray of lightly scented tea, moved almost invisibly, her presence blending into background, unnoticed by most but quietly anchoring the room. Daniel's voice broke the silence, calm but deliberate. "I'd like to discuss your purchases today. Tell me what you chose and why." Emma spoke first, each word polished, each gesture deliberate. "I selected items that reflect elegance and refinement," she said smoothly, listing expensive gowns, high-end watches, and rare jewelry. "I appreciate quality and aesthetics. Why settle for less?" She laughed lightly, the sound rich with confidence and entitlement. Clara's approach was different. She listed her purchases with analytical precision, emphasizing the practicality, the exclusivity, and the future value of each choice. "I chose these because they optimize experiences," she explained. "Every selection is strategic, beneficial, nothing wasted." Her eyes were sharp, scanning Daniel for signs of approval. Lila's words were softer. She spoke with modesty, explaining her reasoning, occasionally pausing to reference causes or small gestures she hoped would help others. "Some things I chose for myself," she admitted, "but others, I thought someone might need them more than I do." Her glance briefly met Rose's, almost as if recognizing a kindred spirit without words. As the women spoke, Daniel observed them carefully, noting subtle cues, a flicker of entitlement, a hint of calculation, the warmth of genuine consideration. Yet his attention kept returning to Rosa. She moved silently between them, refilling glasses, straightening napkins, tending to the smallest details. Her own purchase, a hand-knit scarf, was unseen by the women, yet its significance lingered in Daniel's mind. Flashback intertwined with observation. Daniel at age 12, hiding behind a column at his father's estate, watching a servant quietly console a child who had fallen. The memory of small, unnoticed acts of kindness shaped him more profoundly than any lesson in wealth or power. The thought returned now, connecting him to Rosa, humility, selflessness, integrity. A soft chime interrupted the dinner. Rosa's transaction had gone through. Daniel's hand paused midair, his reaction contained, almost imperceptible, yet charged with unspoken weight. The audience feels the tension. Emma and Clara continue their logical or indulgent presentations, Lila's empathy faintly glowing, but Rosa's simple act now carried a weight neither money nor social status could measure. The first round of conversations ended. Daniel leaned back, swirling the wine, letting the women believe they were being evaluated, all the while keeping his silent observation focused on the quiet thread of integrity threading through the evening. Foreshadowing planted. Rose's small gesture, her unnoticed presence, and the subtle connections between past kindness and present actions hint at a deeper reveal yet to come. Later that night, after the women had left, Daniel remained in his study, the city lights casting angular shadows across the room. He stared at the tablet, the purchases displayed in neat columns, each reflecting a choice, a character, a truth. But it was Rose's small transaction, a hand-knit scarf, that weighed on him most. He closed his eyes, memories surfacing like old film reels, linking past the present. As a boy, Daniel had learned the harsh reality of wealth and expectation. His father, Gregory Whitmore, had been a man whose kindness was reserved for calculation, whose generosity was always measured, who treated empathy as a skill to be tested rather than a virtue to be lived. Daniel had watched employees squirm under his father's scrutiny, seen them scramble for favor, grasping for approval with false smiles. But there were exceptions, quiet moments unnoticed by others. A servant comforting a child, a gardener secretly planting flowers for the sick widow next door. These small acts fascinated young Daniel, lodged in his memory like seeds of understanding that would take decades to bloom. Rose's actions tonight echoed that memory. She had no reason to impress Daniel, no ambition tied to wealth, no hidden agenda. She had purchased a scarf purely to ease someone else's suffering. The realization hit him with a quiet force. Integrity didn't scream. It whispered, and those whispers were often the loudest truths of all. The camera of his mind shifted to women. Emma's laughter, Clara's strategic explanations, Lila's moderated generosity. They all told stories, but each was intertwined with self-interest. Only Rose's choice existed in isolation, untouched by expectation, devoid of performance. The contrast was sharp, almost painful, flashback layered. Rose as a child, barefoot on cracked city sidewalks, clutching a tattered doll. Her mother had taught her that giving, even when it cost nothing, even when unnoticed, was the only measure of worth. Rose had survived hardships, raising her younger brother after her mother's death, always putting others first. Daniel, unaware of the full details until now, felt the weight of her invisible past pressing through time. Each stitch of that scarf symbolized years of resilience, empathy, and quiet courage. He thought of the curiosity loops he had orchestrated, the tests with the credit card, the dinners, the questions. Each moment had been designed to reveal character, yet none had predicted the simplicity of Rose's act would speak louder than the extravagance of the others. Foreshadowing planted. The small gestures, the unnoticed presence, the quiet humility, all of it would converge to a revelation that even he could not fully articulate yet. A knock at the study door pulled him back. It was Lila, hesitant, holding her coat. I hope I didn't misstep today, she said softly, unsure whether she had passed an invisible test. Daniel simply nodded, his mind elsewhere. He poured himself a glass of whiskey, swirling it slowly. The golden liquid mirrored the city lights, a reminder that appearances were fleeting, but truth once revealed left an indelible mark. Rosa, moving quietly in the hallway, carried on with her chores, unaware of the storm of realization building in the man she served. Micro cliffhanger. Daniel's phone buzzed. A notification. Rose's card had been used to purchase another small, thoughtful gift, this one for a terminally ill neighbor. His lips parted slightly, silent. The audience senses a shift. The test was over, but the verdict had only just begun. The following morning, Daniel walked through his penthouse with measured steps, each movement precise, reflecting both his control and the weight of reflection. The previous night's dinner replayed in his mind like an intricate pattern he could not unsee. Emma's sparkling confidence, Clara's calculated logic, Lila's thoughtful restraint. But it was Rosa, moving quietly through the background, who occupied his thoughts most vividly. He watched her as she arranged flowers in a vase, her movements gentle, unhurried, almost meditative. Each bloom seemed to respond to her touch, bending slightly toward the light, an unspoken metaphor for her influence on those around her. Daniel recalled the first time he had truly noticed her. Not tonight, not yesterday, but years ago when she had prevented a catastrophic accident in his penthouse kitchen. A slippery floor, a dropped tray of crystal. He remembered the tension, the near disaster, and her calm, decisive action that went unacknowledged. She had done it not for reward, not for praise, but because it was the right thing to do. A flashback layered seamlessly. Rosa, a child of 10, standing barefoot in a crowded market in her old neighborhood. A woman collapses. Without hesitation, Rosa drops her modest bundle of goods and moves forward to help. That instinct, the reflex of compassion, was innate, unwavering, unshakable. Daniel now saw the continuity. The scarf, the careful observation of the sick child, even her quiet diligence in his penthouse, all threads of the same fabric, weaving a story of integrity that no wealth could replicate. Meanwhile, the other women continued to hover on the edges of his awareness. Emma's recent social media posts flaunted luxuries purchased with his card. Clara analyzed potential business outcomes from her acquisitions, and Lila quietly reflected on donations she planned. Yet each was performing for recognition, in some form. The contrast was stark, even theatrical. Daniel pulled up the credit card activity on his tablet, scrolling past each purchase. The extravagant totals of Emma and Clara drew attention, yes, but Rosa's two small transactions shimmered differently. They were thoughtful, deliberate, aimed not at impressing anyone but at easing pain, creating comfort. He exhaled slowly, the first crack of vulnerability appearing in his usual armor of composure, foreshadowing subtly layered. Earlier mentions of unnoticed kindness, the childhood incident, the gentle humming as she worked, these now converged into a pattern Daniel could no longer ignore. His mind began connecting dots that had been invisible to him for years. Humility, patience, generosity, courage, all displayed quietly, consistently, persistently. A sudden interruption, a phone call. It was a neighbor from Rose's building, calling to thank someone for a thoughtful gift for a sick child. Daniel's eyes narrowed, The voice on the line was specific enough to leave no doubt. The simple scarf, her hand-knit scarf, had reached its intended recipient, creating an impact far larger than the wealth-driven choices of the others. Daniel leaned against the window, silent, letting the realization settle. The lesson was unmistakable. Character cannot be manufactured, calculated, or bought. It reveals itself in quiet acts, in unseen corners, in gestures that go unnoticed by the world, but not by those who truly see. Micro cliffhanger. As Rosa placed a small plate of cookies on the counter for herself, she glanced at Daniel, and for a fleeting moment, their eyes met. The weight of understanding hung between them silently, yet powerfully. The audience senses the impending revelation, one that no credit card, no socialite charm could alter. By late afternoon, the penthouse was quiet except for the soft hum of the city outside. Daniel sat behind his desk, swirling a glass of whiskey, lost in thought. The events of the previous day played over in his mind like a carefully edited film. Emma's indulgence, Clara's calculated precision, Lila's quiet empathy, and Rosa's simple, unwavering kindness. The contrast was stark, almost unbearable in its clarity. A flashback erupted, cinematic and vivid. Daniel, age 12, hiding behind the grand staircase at his father's estate, witnessing the subtleties of true character. One servant quietly consoled a grieving child, while others rushed for approval, bowing to the whims of wealth. The young Daniel's heart had recognized the truth even his father could not articulate. Integrity is revealed in small, often unseen gestures. He had remembered it then, and tonight, that memory resurfaced with undeniable force. Daniel called Rosa into the study. She appeared, carrying a folded blanket she had been mending, her expression neutral, unaware of the gravity in the room. She had no idea why she had been summoned, and the weight of expectation had never been a part of her life. That innocence, that unassuming demeanor, was precisely why Daniel watched her so intently. He gestured toward the tablet, showing her the purchases, his gaze lingering on the small scarf and the neighbor's gift. "You didn't need to do this," he said quietly. Rosa tilted her head, a faint smile touching her lips. "It's nothing," she replied. "Just thought it would help." The honesty, the humility, struck him profoundly. Daniel's memories intertwined with the present. Rosa as a child in her small neighborhood, giving everything she had to help others, teaching her brother the same lessons her mother had instilled. Every stitch of the scarf, every quiet act of kindness, resonated like a living testament to the values Daniel had longed to see in the world. Meanwhile, Daniel's other three guests, Emma, Clara, and Lila, had departed earlier, leaving echoes of their ambitions lingering in the air. Their reactions to his subtle tests had been predictable in hindsight, but Rosa's actions defied expectation. The micro cliffhanger of the previous scene now paid off. Integrity and selflessness had outshone wealth, charm, and calculated empathy. Daniel poured himself another glass of whiskey, listening to the soft footfalls of Rosa returning to her duties. He realized with a quiet awe that her actions were not designed for recognition, reward, or display. They were pure. That purity had forced him into a rare state of speechlessness, a silence charged with both respect and revelation. Foreshadowing layered. The small, unnoticed acts from Rosa's childhood, the quiet hum of her present day, the whispered kindness toward a sick child, all threads now converged, painting a portrait of integrity far beyond social pretense or calculated generosity. Finally, Daniel exhaled, the room holding its breath alongside him. "Some lessons," he murmured, almost to himself, "are learned without words." Rosa, unaware of the magnitude of her influence, smiled softly and returned to her work. The audience feels the weight of recognition, the gravity of character triumphing silently over wealth and performance. Micro cliffhanger. Daniel glanced at his tablet again, seeing that Rosa's humble purchase had sparked a chain of gratitude in the community he hadn't anticipated. The quiet ripple of impact hinted that her integrity would echo far beyond the walls of the penthouse. Evening had fallen over Manhattan, painting the skyline in streaks of violet and gold. Daniel remained at his desk, eyes distant, reflecting on the week's revelations. The three women, Emma, Clara, Lila, were now distant memories, each representing a chapter in his study of human character. But Rosa lingered, her quiet presence a living reminder that true virtue is measured not by grandeur, but by the unseen depth of compassion. Rose appeared at the study doorway, carrying a tray of tea. Daniel gestured for her to sit. She obeyed, her posture relaxed, unaware of the storm of emotions building in the billionaire before her. Daniel reached for his glass of whiskey, swirling the amber liquid, then finally spoke, his voice low but steady. "I've spent years measuring people," he said, "watching for ambition, charm, calculation, and I've rarely seen anything like what you do." Rose's brow furrowed slightly. I don't understand, sir." Daniel gestured to the tablet. "Your purchases. The scarf, the neighbor's gift. They're small gestures in the eyes of the world. But to me, they speak louder than Emma's extravagance, Clara's logic, or even Lila's quiet generosity. You don't act to impress, to be noticed, or to gain favor. You act because it's right." Flashback intercut. Rose as a child, barefoot in a bustling market, instinctively helping a fallen woman. Rose as a teenager, guiding her younger brother through hardships after their mother's death. Rose now, folding laundry, humming softly, yet weaving threads of care into the lives of others. The continuity is undeniable. Each act a testament to enduring integrity. Daniel paused, letting silence fill the room, the weight of his admiration hanging between them. Words felt insufficient, unnecessary. Rose's eyes met his, a subtle understanding flickering in them. She did not need praise. She simply nodded, returning to her chores, her presence a quiet anchor in the whirlwind of wealth and pretense surrounding her. Meanwhile, the city below bustled unaware of the lesson unfolding in a luxurious penthouse. Daniel's mind replayed the past, childhood lessons, failed tests, the folly of measuring worth by display, and finally, he allowed himself to be humbled. The audience senses a depth, a billionaire, accustomed to control, left silent by the simplest act of kindness. Foreshadowing resolution. Emma's indulgence and Clara's calculated generosity had been building blocks, red herrings designed to sharpen the contrast. Lila's moderate empathy served as a bridge, preparing both Daniel and the audience for the revelation. Rose's quiet virtue, hinted at in her childhood and the soft hums throughout the penthouse, finally emerged as the unshakable truth. Daniel finally rose, approaching Rosa. He did not speak. He merely extended a hand to acknowledge her presence, her choices, her integrity. Rosa accepted it with a humble nod, the gesture profound in its simplicity. The audience feels a full emotional spine. Silence, humility, and quiet triumph over ostentation and calculation. The camera pans to the hand-knit scarf, now folded neatly on the counter, symbolizing the enduring impact of unassuming kindness. Outside, city lights glitter, but inside, a quiet, enduring truth has settled. Daniel's voice breaks the final silence, almost a whisper. Some things money can't measure, and some people it can't buy. The screen fades, leaving the audience with the resonance of integrity, empathy, and the silent power of small, meaningful acts.